Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sideline Shenanigans podcast today with Jacob Maggerdan.
Dalton Phillips.
And obviously, we're rolling into another week of college football. I got another good slate here, some big ones. You'll see a big game here. Start off with ACC, but we'll get to that in just a second. If you guys are joining us or returning, joining us for the first time or returning, helps a ton. If you guys like, subscribe, keep following along. Always will be posting analysis after the games are played, usually Monday or Tuesday of the next week. So pick'ems coming out generally on Thursdays. So just keep coming back for those, and we'll dive right into it here. Got our first game that's going to be between Clemson and Georgia Tech being played in Atlanta at Bobby Dodd Stadium, which is a big deal because Georgia Tech does get a pretty good fan base, especially after the way that they turned things around last year and were a pretty good football team. They've got a Heisman contender at quarterback who's already missed a game. That's an issue that they're experiencing last year. They missed a lot of Haynes King, and so they weren't as good as they could have been. And he's already missed one game this year, which of course they didn't need him. So they're playing Gardner Webb. So it was, as you can see, Aaron Philo went off with 373 passing yards there for him. But they have to have him healthy if they want to have any chance in this game. And I know that Clemson didn't look great in their last game playing against Troy, but they come out in the second half and look like the team they're supposed to be. And if they can just iron out some of the mistakes that they've been making, I think, again, this team is legit, probably one of the best in the country. Start out, look at the quarterback duel. Like I said, Klubnik, 37 for 62, two touchdowns, two interceptions, 426 total yards on the season. You do want better stats out of him for sure. A guy that was supposed to be a Heisman contender, and he's only thrown for 400 yards, and he's not thrown any more touchdowns than he has interceptions. So that's something that you got to see him fix if they want to be as good as they're supposed to be. But I still expect him to turn it around and be a Heisman contender. And on the other side for Georgia Tech, they have confirmed that Haynes King is playing and he is a full go. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's not a little bit injured, though, because they're just saying he's a full go because of the game that they're playing. They have to have him if they want to win it. And so he's going to be a big piece of their running game. Dalton, talk about the rest of both of these teams' running games.
Yes. Clemson, they're trying to fill a role of Phil Maffa. I mean, that's a big role to fill, and they're trying to do that with Adam Randall. And I feel like they need to give him the ball more. Give the guys some trust, especially with Cade Klubnik struggling. I feel like you need to give that guy the rock a little bit more. And then on the other side, Georgia Tech, one of my favorite running backs in college football, and I think this might be the best running back in the ACC.
Yeah.
Jamal Haynes. I would love to see this guy get the ball. I would love to see him he do what he does. He's a great running back. Love
Yeah.
watching him play. And also, he's a backup named Malachi Hosley. This guy's averaging 9 yards a carry. You can't ask him better as a backup. And if they're going to win this game, they're going to need to have great running back play.
Yeah, and we talked about that early on with them is they were able to go find a guy that can play with Jamal Haynes and kind of give him some breaks here and there. And he doesn't have to always be the guy on the field with Hosley transferring over from the University of Penn. He was really dominant at that level. And of course, he comes up here and he still looked really good in the carries that he's had. And then, of course, you expect Haynes King will be pretty potent on the ground as well, rushing for like 150 yards in his first game, being the lead rusher on a team that has two good running backs. And then you go down and look at these receivers. Bryant Westco Jr. being the guy for Clemson last week, especially in the second half, he takes over the game. And they need Antonio Williams back. They need him bad because they have had struggles. And he is their veteran guy. But Westco does a great job at being the lead target without Williams on the field. Of course, Stockton being the lead receiver for Georgia Tech, only 91 yards and six catches. Part of that being the fact that Philo played week two, King played week one. So two different systems, whereas Philo was stepping back and throwing the ball, as you can see with the statistics. King ran for, like I said, a close to 150 yards in this in the first game. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here with King. I'm expecting a heavy, heavy dose of the run game, and you might even see a little old Georgia Tech triple option with the running backs that they have and the ability that they could run that out there and do it. And it's definitely something that they were well known for just over, close to 5, 10 years ago. So it'll be interesting to see what they get going on the ground. And again, I think this home field advantage is pretty key for Georgia Tech. Speaking of Key, Brent Key is 6-1 in his close games in his career coaching so far at Georgia Tech. This one I think will be a good close game, but I'm going to have him dropping one here. Going to have him fall into 6-2 in those one-score games. Going to take Clemson on the road here. Part of it is If you know, at the beginning of the year, I said Georgia Tech and Clemson were my two favorite teams in the ACC. I think this is going to be a rematch in the ACC championship game. Now, Georgia Tech's injuries concerns that can definitely hold them back from doing that, and the way that Miami has looked definitely makes that take a little bit, a little bit hotter. But I will say, Georgia Tech with a healthy Haynes King, they can compete against this team. But I just worry that he ain't going to be full 100%. And again, that could be the case all year. So give me Clemson with their stout defense, and they are well coached. So I don't think they'll struggle too much going on the road here.
I'm actually going to defer from you here. I like this Georgia Tech team a whole lot. They've got a great backfield, especially with Haynes King returning. I love that guy. Watching him play, he's an athlete. He makes plays, and I think that this is going to be a not a shootout. It's going to be a who can run the ball better, and maybe Georgia Tech throws a touchdown pass to win the game to surprise everybody.
Yeah, and you would think if it comes down to a rushing duel,
Yeah,
Tech would have the heavy favorite there.
yeah.
Moving on to our next game here, we got the Pitt Panthers playing against West Virginia, and of course, this is one of the biggest rivalries in college football. These two teams absolutely hate each other, and of course, we had the really fun one last year or last week with the border war. We get the backyard brawl again, and I love these two teams going up against each other every year because it's like this is when these two fan bases get riled up, and it is just so fun to watch. No matter how good or bad the two teams are, it always seems to be a good game. Going and diving into the statistics, you look at Pitt's quarterback, it's Eli Holstein. It's a name we know from last year who had a really good season with them. So far, starting off pretty good, 8 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. Of course, that's one per game, but when you're throwing 4 touchdowns per game, you can make up for it. 519 passing yards as well. On the other side for West Virginia, of course, you have Nico Marchiol. So far this season, 32 for 46, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Hasn't done a ton scoring for them. Does have 402 passing yards. Of course, they'll have to figure out a little bit more in the passing game. But Dalton, let's talk about this rushing attack for these two teams.
Yes, for West Virginia, it's a big disappointment here. Jaheim White's hurt. That guy's a stud,
Mhm.
and sad to see him get hurt. But you're hoping that Sincere Bowers and Clay Ash could take the carries from this game. That's who's going to be taking the carries most likely.
Mhm.
And you better hope that they can fill the role because if not, this might be a blowout
Yeah.
because Jaheim White was a big role player in this game. And then for Pitt, Desmond Reed's great back. We talked about him a lot last year. I would like to see his production up a little bit more this year, or a little bit better than it was the last few games. But I mean, when you have an offense like Pitt does and slings the rock like they do, he's about the best back you can have behind him.
Yeah, and of course he was a dynamic playmaker last year. He caught passes
Yep.
for him as well. So you do expect that Reed will be a big part of potentially the passing game, but is also going to be one of the better backs on the field in the ACC. I mean, Reed 18 carries but has 112 yards, so he's done a lot in his short carries. Then you look down at Williams being the lead receiver, 166 yards on only 7 catches. That's an incredible yards per catch, 2 touchdowns as well. On the other side for West Virginia, with Vaughn being the lead receiver, 9 catches, 170 yards, and a touchdown. Of course, like I said before, West Virginia kind of has to get things going more through the air. It might be just target this guy because if he's got 170 of your quarterback's 402 yards, that's nearly half. So he's clearly the favorite of the quarterback and clearly has the talent to be their lead receiver. Also, really efficient on those 9 catches. A lot of statistics coming out of that. This has always been, like I said before, a really heated rivalry. Going to be played in Morgantown, which is definitely an advantage for West Virginia because I feel like they are the lesser talented squad. So getting that home field advantage could potentially make a big difference when going to make a pick here. Dalton, I'll let you lead us.
Big game here. I don't really like West Virginia, so I'm going to go Pitt. I know they say eat whatever it is, Pitt, but I'm going to go with Pitt on this one.
Yeah, and I'm also going to be siding with you there. I do think Pittsburgh takes this one. A lot of what I think happens in this game is Pittsburgh and West Virginia, they are going to hate each other, like I said many times. They'll keep this game close for the first half, I feel like. I do think, however, with the running back injury to West Virginia and him being probably their best player on offense, they'll have to rely more on the passing game, more on guys that aren't as experienced at halfback. Pittsburgh pulls away in the second half with a really good veteran quarterback in Eli Holstein. I just think overall this is a pretty solid Pitt team, whereas West Virginia just lost to Ohio last week. So definitely some question marks for them. Give me Pittsburgh. Moving on to our next game here, it is the University of South Florida Bulls. They are obviously one of the hyped up teams in college football this year, one of the fan favorites, as always, the group of five teams are. And then on the other side is the Miami Hurricanes, a squad that has returned back to being potentially they're back, as they say all the time, and then they blow it at the end of the year almost every year. But this team does look legit. They have a very, very talented group of offensive weapons. And then on top of that, their defense looks 10 times better than it did last year. That would be the huge difference maker for Miami. And if they were to be able to return to that national championship contending status, that defense has to be the way they do it. Going down looking at the statistics, nearly the same passing stats for these two quarterbacks, which just shows you how good Byron Brown is because he's also the team's leading rusher. But looking at those statistics, 39 for 60, a touchdown, no interceptions, 473 passing yards on the other side for Beck, 42 for 55, four touchdowns, no interceptions, and 472 passing yards. So both of these quarterbacks come into this game playing really well. So this is going to be one of those duels that it's like which one can do a little bit more, which one can make the big time plays. Beck has been in those situations. He did it at Georgia. He was really, really good at Georgia. Was again the potential number one overall pick before last season, where he faced a lot of drops by his own guys, but on top of that, had some issues with the injuries. And those kinds of things piled up for him. Whereas Byron Brown's the flashy new guy that everybody knew him from last year, but he's now in the Heisman race. So it is interesting to see this QB duel. Dalton, talk about the running backs for this game.
Yes. For USF, you have Alvin Isaac, good running back, but I like to key on Byron Brown because that guy is a great running back. He's their entire offense. That's who you, if you want to, if I had a Heisman favorite right now, if USF keeps it up, and it's not
Yeah.
going to happen because it's going to be the GNT thing again. I can see that happening again. But if this guy keeps it up, he's going to be I hate my favorite for Heisman, honestly. As of right now, he is. And then for Miami, they have Mark Fletcher Jr. and backup former North Dakota State running back Chamar Brown. And that's a huge addition there from the portal
Mhm.
because, I mean, Mark Fletcher Jr. is already a great running back. And then adding him as your backup, that's an elite dual thing at running back. And you can't ask for a better running back duel to have behind a quarterback named Carson Beck.
Yeah. Again, Beck isn't providing you with any rushing stability on the
Yeah.
ground. So it is nice to have those running backs behind him. We talked about Shamar Brown last year when we covered that NDSU SDSU game, and he went off in that one. So it is nice to see that translate to the upper level for Miami in this one. Moving on to the receivers for both of these teams. Of course, Keyshawn Singleton being the lead receiver for USF right now. They do have Chaz Nimrod. Again, we talked about him last week that performed really, really well in game one. Looked like he could have been the potential star target. Last week didn't have as good of a game. And then on the other side, Miami's star is a freshman in Malachi Tony, who Carson Beck loves. I mean, he went to this guy a ton in game one against Notre Dame, and he made play after play after play. It almost seemed like Notre Dame at one point just decided we got to double bracket this guy and just not let him touch the ball, and that's why Miami was able to score again late in that game is because they just had to double team him. He got open against single coverage every time. So again, 12 for 162 and a touchdown, clearly Beck's favorite target. Dalton, if there's any other fun facts you wanted to say about this game here.
Yeah, I like that. I was thinking about that. I was looking at this, and I think it's pretty cool. Their fullback is their leading sack guy, and that's
Yeah.
impressive to me. I like guys playing doing that Travis Hunter, but doing it better than Travis Hunter.
He's playing both ways here. Got a sack. Probably
Yeah,
gonna get out there and put
he's
somebody on.
basically going to win the Heisman now.
Yeah, he's gonna go put somebody on their hind end for
Yep,
Byron Brown to run behind him.
yep.
But this one being played in Hard Rock in Miami Gardens, Florida. I am not as concerned about that home field advantage for USF going into this atmosphere. It is definitely difficult to play against this Miami team, but their home field advantage isn't great because their home stadium is 40 minutes away from their campus. So you don't really get the student effect, and now you're going to have the fans show up. They are very fair weather in Miami. They have always been like that, where if the team just isn't succeeding, they just don't show up. And now that they've got a top five team in the country, they're going to pack this stadium. But USF, again, don't doubt them being able to go into place and play They played at the Swamp and won, and it took a late game drive. It wasn't like they led the whole time. They had to go down and win it. So this one is going to be really, really fun. I'll go ahead and make my pick first here. I know Dalton loves the USF Bulls. I don't know if he'll go with them for a second time with another huge upset, but I'm going to side on the other side of it and just say Miami takes this one. I would love to pick this upset. I think it would be super fun. But the way Miami's defenses look so far this year, I think that they're a different weapon, and I don't know if South Florida's defense will be able to get after Miami the way they got after Florida, because Lagway, like you said, he looks kind of sloppy at times because he's younger and he hasn't experienced college football. Whereas Carson Beck, he's played against the Alabama defenses, the Texas defenses, the Tennessee defenses. He's played against legit high level defenses and dominated them in his 1 year of dominance at Georgia, compared to last year where it wasn't as good. But even the second half against Alabama last year, you saw the flashes of how good he can be. I just don't know if they can stop him the way they were able to stop and contain Lagway. So give me Miami, but I do not like this 15-point spread. I think this will be a
I'm taking that 100%.
yeah,
I'm
I
taking
would
that
I would take
100%.
all day. Give
I
me
might go. I might go put $1,000 on that right now.
but give me Miami in a close one.
Yeah, I'm taking the money line here on USF. Uh, I'm going. I'm staying. I'm sticking with them. I was with them last week, and I really like what's going on down there. I don't know, and it's not even South Florida. That's what doesn't make sense. It's Tampa.
Yeah.
I went down to Tampa and I was like USF. I would think South Florida will be down there towards Miami. That's like middle Florida for me, but I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know what's going on there, but I like it. I'm drinking the water.
Moving on to our next game here, got a big one in the SEC. Of course, Ole Miss coming off of a SEC victory over Kentucky, but a really close battle. And then Arkansas coming in this game pretty hot, 2-0 to start the year. And this is obviously the kind of season they want to have. They have to come in here and win these big time games. This being their first true massive game that they play in. You go down and look at these statistics for these two teams. Taylor Green is a monster for Arkansas. I mean, this guy is one of the more dynamic quarterbacks in the country, 41 for 57, 10 touchdown passes through 2 games, only the 2 interceptions, 561 yards. I love the way he's playing. He adds a whole nother element to his game with his rushing ability. And then on the other side for Ole Miss, you're seeing a little bit of struggle from Austin Simmons. Now, he did just take over in the system, so you expect there could be some issues here and there, especially in his first couple games. Could probably be a good thing that they got a Kentucky out of the way and was able to play an SEC defense to prepare him for this one. Does have 3 touchdowns to his 4 interceptions, which is pretty rough, but has 576 yards through the air. That's good, but once again, you'd like to see him really calm down on the interceptions, as you can't have 4 through your first 2 games. Dalton, what about these running backs here?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with Ole Miss here. Keyone Lacey. This guy's a younger back, but he's a heck of a running back for being this young, and I like to see that. I like that to start him at that point, and I feel like if they win this game, it'll be very reliant on him. And this Arkansas team has Mike Washington Jr., and that guy's averaging 10 yards a carry, and that's just ridiculous. And I mean, you can't ask for no better as a running back, especially with 18 carries. He's not like getting limited on carries.
Yeah.
He's just running the ball really, really well. And I like to see that a lot.
Yeah, and you move down to the receiving core, of course. Both of these teams had to replace some pretty key pieces. One of them losing some guys in the portal, Ole Miss losing Trey Harris to the NFL. So those replacements have been made. And you see Blake for Arkansas going 12 for 185 and 2 touchdowns. Great performance to start the year from him. And then Wallace the third on the other side, 9 catches, 247 yards. That is an incredible receiving yards per catch, and it really seems to be the key target for Austin Simmons early on. I expect he will be the key target once again. We'll see how the Razorbacks are able to handle him, and if they don't lock him down, man, I mean, again, this is crazy how good he's been through his first 9 catches of the season from Austin Simmons. This game taking place in Oxford, Mississippi. Ole Miss getting the home game, big time game for them. They are well coached. You know how Lane Kiffin is. He's one of those offensive minds that he just plug and plays. It don't matter what quarterback he got, what scheme he has, or what he has around his scheme. He can make it work on offense. I do think this will be a high scoring game, but give me the upset here. Give me the Arkansas Razorbacks who I love their quarterback. I just think Taylon Green, when he isn't making mistakes and he isn't turning the ball over or being sloppy with it in the backfield and fumbling it, he is unreal. He's got an insane talent with his legs. He can probably rush for 50 to 60 yards with ease in this game. But on top of that, the way he's passed the ball to start the year, 10 passing touchdowns through the air. Give me his production. Give me this team to go out and get a huge upset. And I just haven't seen Ole Miss look really all that dominant in the first two games. Hey, it worries me how Austin Simmons has played. And I just think Arkansas gets it done here on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to side with you here. And also, I think ESPN needs to get their analytics team checked because I don't think this game is that big of a separation here. And I think that this Arkansas team is going to be a ranked team next week, I believe.
Yeah, you get this win here, you're 3-0,
Yeah.
starting out with a big win in SEC play, and it would definitely be massive for Arkansas, who is hoping to make a push towards the end of Sam Pittman's career. Moving on to our next game here, you got Texas A&M playing Notre Dame. This is another big rivalry game for Notre Dame, of course, coming off the rivalry loss to Miami. This is going to be a super important one because if Notre Dame starts 0-2 on the season, even with it being two losses to top 16 teams, who knows how their schedule will lend to them to make the playoff later down the road with no conference championship. And again, starting 0-2, you just dig yourself a big hole. We'll go down to these statistics. Looking at Marcel Reed for A&M, been incredible to start the season. You can't really ask for more, being their leading rusher with over 100 yards and a touchdown on the ground, but also 509 yards through the air, showing his dynamic passing ability and 7 touchdowns to no interceptions. Really, really great performance from him so far. If they keep getting this, A&M is going to be really scary. Again, quarterback play being one of their biggest issues last year. They'd have been great then. Then you go to the other side with Notre Dame. Of course, they struggled in their first game, but they didn't struggle bad. They had times where they looked sloppy, but then their offense got rolling, and they came back in that Miami game just to lose it late. Carson Beck makes a pretty good drive to win it, but CJ Carr showed some really promising things to me. I think that their passing attack is going to be better than it was last year, and they just have to get Jeremiah Love going. Why is Jadarian Price your lead rusher, and why did he only have 6 carries, and Love only had like I don't know 10 carries? So it's just not enough. Those two guys are probably the two best players on your team, and you're not giving the ball enough. I don't care what you're down by. Jeremiah Love can break off 160-yard touchdown and put you right back in it. So those two guys got to touch the ball, and of course Carr has to keep playing the way he has. Dalton, what about these running backs?
Yeah, you covered a lot about the Notre Dame side of the running backs with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Those are two of the best running backs in college football, and they're on the same team.
Mhm.
And I love Jeremiah Love. You talk about him making big plays. This guy is the kind of guy that's not only going to run through you, he'll run around you, jump over top of you,
Yep.
he'll back up over top of you. He'll do whichever way he wants to
Yeah.
go, he's going to go. And I don't understand why Notre Dame doesn't goes away from this guy because he's your best player in your team, and there's no doubt about it. And then you go to Texas A&M. They also have what I think is one of the better running backs in the SEC, and Le'Veon Moss. He was a stud last year, and I want to see him keep up production this year.
Yeah, and of course, we mentioned that the running back Le'Veon Moss being successful in the rushing attack will only help Marcel Reed
Yep.
continue his rushing ability he's had so far. Mario Craver here being their lead receiver, 13 catches, 3 touchdowns, 236 yards. Really great start to the season for him, and again becomes Marcel Reed's favorite target. We're seeing this quite common on a lot of these teams as they've got guys that are majority of their passing stats, or at least half of them, so it's super positive to have a guy and you already got a connection early on in the season. On the other side, for the Fighting Irish, CJ Carr in this first game goes to Eli Raridon a ton. Seems to be his favorite target. Of course, they have transfer over from Virginia, Malachi Fields, who is incredible, one of the better talents, a very big guy on the outside, a 6'4" receiver that can make a difference. And then they have Jaden Greathouse, one of the guys returning from last year's playoff run that looked like a real contributor. Then can he come in and be, the guy once again in the slot position? And that becomes a pretty nice little three-headed snake there with Raridon, Malachi Fields, and Jaden Greathouse. I expect this offense to be better this week, playing at home against A&M. Going to make a pick in this one. Dalton, I'll let you lead us here.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the SEC here. I think Texas A&M is going to pull it through. I don't believe in this Notre Dame's team, actually, especially after the way they went away from what they should do the best. I don't like that. And if they do that, I believe they might win. But I'm going to go Texas A&M here.
Yeah, and I'm going to side opposite of you here. I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I do think that that's a lot of what you have to do here. It's all, the money's on the line. You start 0 and 2. Like I said, that's an incredibly difficult hole to dig yourself out of. You would have to pretty much win out to make the playoffs. So I do think they get this one done. They get a huge win over an SEC school that I expect to be pretty good in A&M. I just think Notre Dame did all the right things other than running the ball. Like you said, why does Jeremiah Love not get the ball? This game, I think they've heard it enough all week or all 2 weeks because they had a bye week that Jeremiah Love, he's going to get 16 to 18, maybe 20 plus carries. Going to make a difference in this game. And I just expect CJ Carr to continue the way he's played. He didn't look rattled at all in his first big start. So I expect him to come in and play really well in front of that Notre Dame Fighting Irish crowd. Moving on to our next one here, we have the Florida Gators going on the road to play LSU at Death Valley. This is an extremely difficult game for Florida right after taking a pretty big loss in the swamp. And LSU wants to continue the hot streak and get their first win in SEC play. Move down and look at these statistics from the quarterbacks. DJ Lagway, of course, facing a bit of an injury in his first game, comes back and plays in the second game, but doesn't play his best football. He wasn't terrible in that game, but he wasn't a guy that is a Heisman contender, that's for sure. And again, on the season, 38 for 51. That's a pretty nice completion percentage. 342 yards, 4 touchdowns to only that one interception, which was thrown last week. But on the other side, we are talking about a Heisman quarterback, and that's Garrett Nussmeier. One of the more elite passing attacks in the entire country. Nussmeier, 470 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. I expect a lot out of him, keep things going. And this offense, again, very, very high powered passing attack. But Dalton, their running back is not bad either. Talk about those guys.
For Florida, you have Jaden Ball, which is huge. He's a great running back, really good. And then as his backup, Jacoby Jackson. These two guys need to help support your quarterback, especially when he's struggling.
Mhm.
And then for LSU, another back that I think that might be in contention for the best running back in the SEC, and that's Caden Durham. This guy, he started off a little bit slow this year, but he's a young guy. I would expect him to show up the rest of the season.
Yeah, and his legs aren't worn down. Again, like you said, he's a young guy. He was a
Yeah.
freshman last year, so he's definitely not worn out and definitely can get going for this team and create another dynamic to an offense that I've already really liked early on in the season. Going down, looking to lead receivers for Lagway on the Gators, Brown the third being the lead receiver, 8 catches, 135 yards. Of course, they had to replace talent that went out and left them after the last season. They had a couple guys go to the NFL. Chimray DK being one of those guys that's now playing for the Tennessee Titans. Had some really awesome returns. And for them last season, had another great return for the Titans in his first game with them, a 70-yard return on a kickoff. So you see the kind of talent that they lost if that guy's able to go to the NFL and make an immediate impact. So again, that could be part of the issues and why they're struggling early on. And on the other side, for LSU, Aaron Anderson is Garrett Nussmeier's favorite target, his lead receiver, a guy that is a monster on the outside, big time playmaker, can be one of the more important players in this game. I expect that Nussmeier will want to go to him early and often. And of course, you go down, have to mention some names here because these are potential NFL guys, and Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks. Two incredible defensive players for this team at LSU. And again, you can make a true argument that this is one of the more well-rounded teams, potentially the best team in the country. And we'll see as the season rolls on how they keep playing. Going to make our picks here. Florida again on the road at Death Valley, one of the more difficult environments to play in. Give me LSU to continue the success they've had early on in the season. I think Florida again, their schedule is absolutely brutal, and one of the games you had to win was USF. And I think that Napier is already getting his job called for. A lot of fans are peed off, so we can't lose to USF when we play the hardest schedule in college football. That's going to show here as they're going to go to 1-2 on the season, and the Tigers get a big win, moving to 3-0 and 1-0 in conference play.
Yeah, I'm going to second you here on LSU. With LSU, I hate Florida. Billy Napier is going to get fired. I can just go ahead and tell you it's going to happen. Yeah, and my hatred for Florida is way more than my hatred for LSU. I don't like LSU, but I really hate Florida.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go LSU here.
Moving on to our next game here, we've got another SEC duel between the Vanderbilt Commodores on the road against the South Carolina Gamecocks. Of course, South Carolina and Vanderbilt, two familiar opponents for myself here, as you can see the tech flag in the back, two of our L's to start the year against these two teams. Of course, Vanderbilt, they beat us by a lot more than South Carolina, so who's to say that they haven't had a better start to the season, although South Carolina is sitting at number 11 in the country. Going down and looking at the statistics for Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia being the lead passer, being the cog that makes the machine work for this offense. Of course, without him, I don't know what their scheme looks like next year because they've ran the exact same scheme with their offensive coordinator, with this guy in these 2 years here, but also with Jerry Kill over at New Mexico State. So he's been the whole point of those rosters working out. So this is his last year to prove it. I think he's definitely taking that and saying, I got to do it. So a great start for him through the air. Obviously, dynamic rusher, probably one of the best quarterbacks when it comes to his rushing ability. On the other side for South Carolina, of course, they have quarterback Lenore Sellers, one of the better quarterbacks in the entire country, a guy that was talked about before the season started as a potential Heisman candidate. Gets comparisons to Cam Newton because of his rushing ability. One of the higher rushing upsides of any quarterback. Also, he's one of the bigger quarterbacks. That's kind of why you get that comparison. If you watched him run in that Virginia Tech game, I mean, his first touchdown, he literally ran through a linebacker and made him look like a little kid. So this guy is a difference maker for this team, and has had a pretty good start to the year passing the ball. I mean, it's not like a ton of passing yards, but no interceptions and really hasn't made any mistakes. Gonna need him to have his best game of the year though in this one because again, this Vanderbilt team they're playing fired up and they are playing like they can beat anybody. And South Carolina definitely isn't somebody they're scared of. I truthfully don't think they're scared of anybody the way they beat Alabama and some of the teams they beat last year. I don't think they have anybody else to prove it against. And Dalton, what about these running backs?
Yeah, Vanderbilt not only has Diego Pavia as a running back, they also have Cedric Alexander, and I like Cedric Alexander. He's a good running back, and they also have Malachi Young. Both of them are good running backs, especially for their offense. They run a very kind of a veer and shoot offense slightly for South Carolina. They're trying to fill the role of Rocket Sanders,
Mhm.
and that's a hard role to fill because they were very reliant on that last year with Oscar Attaway and Rachel Faison or the backs that we're trying to replace them with. I would like to see them replace them a little bit better than what they have been doing because you got to trust those guys because Lenore Sillers is a great athlete, but you got to have somebody behind him that can back him up a little bit.
Yeah, you don't want him running every play. I mean, you can't have your
No.
quarterback getting hurt because he runs too much. It's seen it happen to too many different teams. I mean, Haynes King with Georgia Tech, that's kind of the same situations. He runs a lot and faces those injuries. Of course, with Attaway and Russell Faison gets the late ability to play because they didn't confirm his ability to touch the field until like 3 weeks before the season started. So he started out pretty cold. They do think once he gets going, he could be really good for them. Utah State transfer, over 1,000 yards. So really good, but Attaway has kind of been the guy so far. You go down and look at the receivers. Richardson being the lead guy over there for Diego Pavia, but of course he's got a couple targets. He goes to Martel Height, the corner. He's a two-way player that has made plays in both of the games as a receiver. So there's a lot of options for them. They obviously have Eli Stowers, who's the best tight end in college football, in my personal opinion. And he hasn't done a lot through the first 2 games, but it's kind of like he does stuff, and it's like you don't even realize it until you go back and look at the game. He is a playmaker, but he's also somebody that can block pretty well with the scheme they have. And he's always a distraction. You're going to have a lot of double coverage going on just because of how good he is at the tight end position. On the other side, for the Gamecocks, of course, Nick Harbor, that was all against Tech. 3 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown was literally all against us. So him being the lead receiver with one game and not having a single catch in the other one could be a worrying thing, but also that's kind of how Nick Harbor is. He's hot and cold. He'd be a monster superstar receiver if he wasn't. So obviously you expect that maybe that he gets going, maybe he doesn't. Who knows? But also when he is going, he's unbelievable. I mean, again, he runs a 4.240 and he's 6'5". So it's just one of the better targets in football if he can make plays on the outside. This game being played in Columbia, South Carolina, going to have the sandstorm going crazy. Do think that the Beamer boys are ready to roll. But Dalton, what's your pick in this one?
I'm going to pick this Vanderbilt team. I think they're like very good. And I honestly, the South Carolina team, very good defensively, but I feel like their offense is, even with Lenore Sellers playing as good as he does, like it's a little bit lackluster. And this Vanderbilt team is a team that's going to find flaws in teams. They're good at that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what they're going to key on. And I believe they're going to pull through in a close victory here.
Yeah, and crazy enough, I'm with you here. So both of us going on the side of the
Yeah.
unranked team coming in and playing in the home environment of a ranked team. But I do think Vanderbilt is unbelievably good at finding weaknesses. The Tech
Hmm.
game at halftime, we're winning 20-10, part of that being because we forced turnovers, but also those mistakes were something we were able to force against them and make that our game, make it how we were playing. They'll go into halftime and find every weakness we have and come out and expose us in the second half. And they won their first game by a ton of points as well. Of course, it was against a nobody, but this team can score points, and they do know how to find your weaknesses. They know how to counter what you do on offense. They just make such good adjustments. A lot of that being Jerry Kill. I think he's an unreal associate. I mean, he's like the head coach, but he's an associate because the real head coach. And again, the way that they are able to just make up a scheme, that this offense doesn't lose yards. They don't have TFLs. They don't have sacks. It's so hard to stop this offense from just gaining yards on every play. If they're not putting themselves behind the sticks with stupid penalties, which they did a little bit against us, or bad turnovers, I think they'll control the game. And I think that, yeah, they're going to pull away with a really close win. This is one of those probably lower scoring because of how well both of these teams can run the ball. Part of that being because the running back or the quarterbacks for both teams. But I just think Vanderbilt controls the clock and gets it done here in a really close one. Moving on to our next game here, it is the Duke Blue Devils going on the road to play Tulane, and you know how it works when these power schools go on the road to Group of Five teams, especially Group of Five teams that are pretty good. We just saw UCLA try to do that and get beat by UNLV. We've seen a couple other schools go on the road and try to compete against these teams, and it's not easy. You got to go into their environment where their fan base will be going crazy because this is the biggest game they get all year when it comes to the opponent that they're playing. I do expect a lot out of Tulane going into this one. Diving into these statistics, of course, Darian Mensah, they'll know his face. They'll know the way he plays. This is exactly where he was last year, leading this team to a potential playoff spot. He's going to come in for Duke, playing really well so far. 723 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, only the 1 interception. Again, you expect him to be really, really good. This is that revenge game, if you want to say. I don't think he left on bad terms, though. He just left for opportunity. But again, opportunity and money as well. Yeah, 2.5 million is the rumored number he got there. So that opportunity is also great though to compete and have the potential of Duke again expected to be good. I don't think if they don't shoot themselves in the foot a bunch last week, they could have beat a top 11 Illinois team. So again, mistakes have to be limited for them, but on the other side, for the Green Wave, we see Jake Retzlaff at quarterback, and that was the late addition that they got through like the sneaky transfer portal, which is where you just don't enter the portal, you just go into free agency practically, and you can go wherever you want. So he goes in there, he's not even on scholarship technically, he's on like a walk on, but they're just giving him NIL. So that all works out. Yeah. And Retzlaff has looked really good. I mean, he is 177 rushing yards through 2 games and 277 passing, 31 for 55, 2 touchdowns. Clearly, the starting quarterback has learned the system in short notice and looks really, really good. We saw him at BYU last year do this. I don't know why people thought he couldn't handle that situation and go in and make plays. And they're also really well coached. So that is a big difference maker. Dalton, talk about how these two quarterbacks kind of are the parts of the offenses and the running back rooms aren't as great.
Yes, you have two great running quarterbacks,
Yeah.
but for Duke, they also have a decent running back, but they're trying to fill a role of a guy that's now at Tennessee, Star Thomas, very good running back there. For Duke, they have Anderson Castle. He leads the team in yards, but he's shaky. He's not really the lead back. He just had one really big run last week. And Jaquez Moore leads in carries. Jaquez Moore's a good running back. I'd like to see him with a few more carries, take the weight off of. And then just for Tulane, uh, they have more of like a shared backfield between Javin Gordon, Zabreri, Mobley, and Maurice Turner. So this team is not very reliant on the running backs at all. They rely on their quarterback to do that for them, but you need to see those guys be able to make a play or two because you have to have that. Like the same situation we've been talking about with like South Carolina and Vanderbilt. You have to give a running back a little bit of attention because if not, the quarterback's not going to do as good.
Yeah, and of course they relied on Mensa's legs last year, so it's the
Yeah.
same kind of thing where they're letting Retzlaff make plays. He's had 23 carries so far, 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. So obviously been their lead guy on the ground. Go over and look at Duke's lead receiver in Barcate. We've talked about him already. He's had an incredible start to the year. He's been the lead receiver in both of their games. I think they could have won, like I said before last week, without mistakes. And on the other side, with Hayes for Tulane being the lead receiver for Retzlaff, who hasn't had to throw the ball a ton because of his rushing upside. Then you go down and look at this defense, and this is just a name that has to be mentioned. In Vincent Anthony Jr., defensive end for Duke, with 3.5 sacks through 2 games. Been an absolute game wrecker. Was really, really good in that Illinois game. Was in the backfield constantly. And that's kind of the thing that they said that they're going to rely on this year at Duke is their front seven, but specifically their two edge rushers getting off the edge, making plays. This guy's had a really good start, and they just are able to get in the backfield and make a difference. So we'll see what Tulane does to shift the game and not allow those guys to get back there and make plays. Maybe they run away from Vincent Anthony all the time and just stay out of his zone and don't let him make plays and see if they can beat this Duke team that, of course, Tulane definitely wants revenge against Mensa for heading out the door, even if Mensa didn't leave on bad terms. Going on up to make our picks here. Of course, this one taking place in Yulman Stadium. Duke making the mistakes they made last week, a team that can definitely get a win here. Tulane looking for a huge power school victory. Dalton, who you got in this one?
I think Duke is a very good football team, but I really like Jake Retzlaff.
Yeah.
This guy is the coolest guy on campus, and he is just that guy. And I believe he's going to pull through against Duke, even though I do think this Duke team is way better than the 27% that the ESPN analytics is trying to say.
Yeah, the analytics are hating on Duke.
They're
Wait,
great. What is wrong with these? I need to go to ESPN. Hire me,
you go to their
please.
analytic
I'm
department.
better than them.
Can I get a
Like,
job down there, please? But
yeah,
yes, this matchup here is way. I mean, especially when you got a spread that's 2.5. So it's like, why is our analytics
that
this?
don't make sense.
Yeah, but again, well, that's the opened at as well. It's down to 1.5, so it's even closer. I do think I'm going to side with you here though with Tulane. I think that they are coached extremely well. That's one of the biggest positives of this roster is, man, they kind of have roster turnover all the time because these guys always go to bigger schools. They lost their lead halfback and their lead quarterback to other teams that are now their best players on those teams. Duke, of course, being the benefactor of one of those, but. I think Tulane gets it done here. I think that they figured out the system they want to run with Jake Retzlaff. I think it works really, really well, and give me Tulane to get a huge win against the power school. Going into our next game here, of course, the ODU Monarchs, an old rival of Tech in the last, I don't know, 7 years. We've played them at home, and then, of course, the third place where we struggled mightily until last year, picking up our first win in their stadium. And, of course, Tech started out the year really, really bad. This is a game where they're not even huge favorites in this one, but if you don't win by a ton, you've lost the fan base. The coaching staff is going to be out the door, especially if you lose. And that would be the final straw, 100%. If the ODU was able to come in here and beat this team, I think it would be game over for your coaching staff. But going down and looking at the statistics, Colton Joseph, one of the better rushing quarterbacks in the entire country. And actually, a lot of the statistics point towards him being the single best rushing quarterback in the country, which is pretty wild with how many good ones there are in college football nowadays. You look at these passing statistics again 30 for 46, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Don't make those mistakes. And obviously, the touchdowns are pretty nice. You look at the other side with Kyron Drones, does have the 2 interceptions stemming over from week one. But last week, I thought he played a lot better. He was just indecisive. And some of that come from the fact that he made those mistakes in week one. He didn't want to force the passes. And we need Kyron Drones to be special to be able to win games this year. He has to make those super highlight level plays, and he just doesn't do it. He's scared. He steps back. Now, when he's running the ball, he tries to make those plays, and he does make those plays. But the sacks last week really limited his rushing upside. So that's kind of the rundown on the QBs. Dalton, give us the rundown on those running backs.
Yes. For ODU, you have Traquan Jones. He's a big like long run threat, but their lead back is Marik James. He's a decent running back just to be at ODU.
Yeah,
And for Tech, you've got a bunch of like different backs.
yeah, ton.
Marcelo Hawkins, Jeremiah Coney, and PJ Prelude are the main three. And I want to key on one guy named PJ Prelude. We played against that guy in high school. He's a stud, absolute stud. And I think this Tech team is really missing Bashaw Tootin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, it's hard to replace a guy that rushed for as much as he did last year. Was the team lead in touchdowns as well, and obviously he was a top 10 back in college football last year. So that piece has just been missing big time. Well, a team that wanted to run the ball as much as we did, we come into this year. Now, I do think Marcellus Hawkins has shown some upside in his first 2 games. Terrion Stewart being the one name you haven't mentioned, because his statistics don't look like it. It was only 3 carries for 10 yards, but man, he's never averaged under 5 yards in his entire career at Bowling Green. One of the best running back in the portal. We went out and added him, and he just hasn't been healthy. So if he comes back healthy again, I think this rushing attack can change, but it won't until he's good to go, and he hasn't been so far. You go down and look at the receivers for them. Of course, Thomas being the lead receiver again. Colton Joseph dynamic with his abilities to run and pass. 8 catches, 1 touchdown, 110. And then on the other side for Virginia Tech, Donovan Green is your lead receiver. Would have loved to have seen him used more last week. Only 1 reception. And again, he made way too many big time plays in the first game to not be a lead target and be targeted on the outside. Aiden Green, of course, being the other lead receiver. Both of them can be the playmakers on the outside. And I expect Cam Seldon to step up and take a big time role. Of course, you remember him at Tennessee last year, where he was a back that
Yep.
ended up having 250 rushing yards and a couple rushing touchdowns. So a guy that can be a difference maker. He's one of the fastest players in college football. He's got unreal speed, and they're finally letting him take over that slot position fully, as the depth chart listed, anyways. And I do expect that Benji Gosnell starts to lighten it up at the tight end position. Saw a better game from him, but still not what we want out of him. Does have another year though of eligibility after this one, so hopefully he can get things going and then come back next year and be even better. If the team isn't falling apart based on how we play. In the rest of this season. Going down and looking at these defenses for Virginia Tech, Elaj Fall has been a really nice surprise on the defensive line. A lot of people didn't know who he was, but he's been a difference maker. Really, really good game against South Carolina. Looked pretty solid again in his snaps against Vanderbilt last week. And then, of course, Michael Short being the leading tackler, as he was a backup linebacker week one, goes into week two and pretty much steals the job from Keller because Keller just didn't play well. Now Woodson and Short being the combo at linebacker is better, but it still has been an ugly position group for us. And then on the other side for ODU, the biggest story being the fact that Jason Henderson is done playing college football. Probably one of the sadder stories to hear, because this kid, if you don't know, in 2022 and 2023 had nearly 350 combined total tackles. An unreal 2 seasons at this level of college football. He could have seriously been playing anywhere in the country. He could have played at Alabama and been their starting linebacker. That's how good this kid was. He was the size of a monster, like linebacker. I mean, me and Dalton were literally saying this dude looks like he was literally in the NFL for the
He
last
looked like Boz. He
he
looked like
he looked like he'd been in the league for the last 5 years,
yes.
and he was playing college football. Faces one of the more serious injuries you can have, where everything in his knee was torn apart. Tried to return last year, didn't do much. Returned this year, had a pretty solid game number one, but then consulted with doctors, and they decided it's over. Your career's done. They hated telling him that, but at the same time, you know how hard of a decision it was for him. A guy that had real legit NFL upside. I mean, I'm talking not just fourth, fifth round NFL upside. I'm talking this is a first or second round linebacker after his first 2 really good seasons. So just extremely upsetting for him, his career being over. And again, they've had to replace him. Easterly being the guy playing safety, Mack being listed as a linebacker, and being their leading sack guy off the edge, potentially probably more of that outside linebacker. But they have had a really rough time replacing Henderson on that defense. Going to make a pick in this one. This game opened at a sorry 6.5 points because ODU held Indiana to a 27-13 game where they were in it the entire time, which obviously scares you. But I do think Tech will end up winning this game. I don't think it's going to be much of a blowout, and I think the fan base isn't going to be happy about that. I do think that I was optimistic going into last week based on the South Carolina game, but I didn't see what I wanted to see last week. I think that this coaching staff backs against the wall, and if they don't coach good here and they lose this game, it's over. You will be fired after this week. If you start 0-3 and your third loss is to ODU, your career at Virginia Tech, it ends. So I do think backs against the wall, they're able to get a victory here. I don't know by how much, because I worry about what Colton Joseph does to us. We don't defend rushing quarterbacks the greatest. But luckily, this team isn't as talented as the last two, not even close. I do think Tech gets it done.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go with ODU, and I think Pry goes by. I'm just being honest. I think he's out the door, and I don't know who you're gonna try to find. Hopefully, John Gruden comes up there.
Hey, John Green's son would be happy to. He said, "I don't want to wish anything against Pry." That's what he said in the video. But obviously, just to talk about that because it is a talking point. Again, if you lose this game, he will be fired. In my personal opinion, I don't think you can hang on to him anymore if you lose that game, being 0-3 after what a lot of people thought you could be 2-1 after this one. But that coaching question will be a big one because what are head coaches in college right now? They're just GMs. They just go out and add players, and the OCs and the DCs make the decisions on offense and defense. All the head coaches have to do now is just be good at recruiting players. Do you know who would be pretty good at recruiting players? Michael Vick. Michael Vick,
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I'm not saying he's that great of a head coach. He clearly hasn't had enough time to become a head coach. He's 1-1 at Norfolk State.
but who doesn't want to play for Michael Vick?
Exactly. What rushing quarterback wouldn't say, "Hey man, I can go play for the greatest college rushing quarterback of all time."
Yeah,
Again, the upside is there to go out and just. I saw a guy speaking about this exact point, and he was like, all they have to be able to do nowadays is just say, come down and play for me. It's all Dion does. Dion doesn't have this
Dion's a terrible. He's a terrible coach,
he doesn't, well, I don't think he's a terrible coach.
but he's a insanely good recruiter. That's
I think he had a rough start to his career coaching, but I think once he's got to this level, he's figured out how to coach, but also he was able to build a staff because Colorado gave him the money to do
yeah.
it. The Board of Visitors for Virginia will be voting on September 30th to make a difference. Our athletic department could go from 144 million to 200. That is a massive climb in money. If that happens, I do think Tech can compete in the future, but that has to happen for anything to change. Otherwise, you're going to keep seeing 6-6 and then lose a bowl game or win a bowl game. That's going to be every single season for the rest of time. So moving on from this one, I do think Tech gets it done. Dalton picking the other way. Moving to our next game here. This is the big one. This is the game of the week for sure. This is game day. I'm gonna really concerned about who's gonna get on that game day. Who's gonna be it. I think if yeah, Dalton is actually he's been called in.
I'm kicking, by the way.
He's been called
Pat
in.
already called me up.
You're long snapping to the kicker. Remember,
Yeah,
you're long snapping
yeah, yeah.
to the holder, which is going to be Herbie, and then they're going to get a kick from somebody. But I don't know who it's going to be, but I think that they would be remiss not to go out and ask Peyton Manning. Hey Peyton, come on down. Everybody loves him in the media world.
It's got to be Peyton Manning. Like you can't not have
Everybody loves him.
or Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton would be decent
See,
too.
Dolly would be that was at the top of the list for a lot of people. Was Dolly, Peyton Manning, and then potentially like some former like really like just happened that just left. So like maybe a Hendon or maybe a Dylan Sampson, one of those names that's already
Yeah.
really good. But of course, Sampson it'd be hard to work out with.
Or Morgan Wallen.
That's been a rumor as well. I don't like that one as much just because he doesn't have the big connection to
Yeah.
Tennessee like the other ones do, of course. Going into, of course, talking about the game, these two teams coming in 2-0. Georgia looked kind of rough last week against Austin Peay. Didn't really get things done, but week one they had a huge win over Marshall where they just destroyed Marshall. Of course, that's a different school than they were last year, but to blow them out and then struggle against Austin Peay didn't make any sense. And then Tennessee has scored an unreal amount of points the first 2 weeks. Same thing they were able to do last year, just getting points on the board. Obviously, you have to score to win, so if they keep that rolling, we'll see what happens in this one. Looking at the statistics for both quarterbacks, Gunnar Stockton, 417, 40 for 58, 2 touchdowns, has looked exactly like they need him to look. Like the game manager that makes all the right decisions. Exactly what Kirby thought he was going to be, and Kirby kept him and said, we don't need a transfer quarterback. We've got our guy. Gunnar Stockton has been that guy for them so far. And on the other side for Tennessee, Joey Aguilar has been unreal. He's been exactly what Tennessee wanted. When they went out and got a portal quarterback, they said, you know what, Nico, if you want to leave, we'll grab a guy that can run our offense. And he does it really well. He has the rushing upside. Now, he's not probably as athletic as Nico at times, but also he has a little bit of he's a smaller frame, so he's able to make cuts here in short distance gains and just make different plays than Nico did. And then obviously the deep ball has really been unlocked for Tennessee this year. They've let a couple deep ones go, and he's pretty accurate on those. Of course, you can see 39 for 59, 5 touchdowns, 535 yards, 0 interceptions so far. So the mistakes haven't been there. I think he may have a fumble, but again, the interceptions aren't there. So he's had a really good start through the air. Dalton, talk about these halfbacks.
Oh yeah. I'm going to start with Georgia because I'm going to talk about Tennessee for a little bit. For Georgia, they got Nate Frazier, very good running back.
Yeah.
He's a big guy, stud there, and his backup's Dwight Phillips Jr. And they have a great backfield, but his backfield's not there. It's not as good as the Tennessee Volunteers. Star Thomas, Deshaun Bishop, and Peyton Lewis are maybe the best trio in football
Yeah,
in
not a lot of
college
teams are
football, in my
operating
opinion.
with three. Not a lot of teams are operating with three.
Yeah, not a lot of teams run with three backs, and every one of them are good. And Star Thomas is obviously as is probably the true number one, I would say, because he has established himself as a great running back. He catches balls out of the backfield,
Mhm.
but this air running back group is insanely good, and uh, I like that the three running backs besides the Dylan Sam because you had Dylan Sampson last year, and that guy was their entire team.
Yeah.
But now these three running backs play the role of him, and you have to worry about them getting as tired as he did. Because towards the end of the season, you could see he was getting wore down and
He was
stuff.
worn out. He was out
Yeah,
by the last game.
yeah.
Going down and looking at the receivers, of course, Zachariah Branch being the big time transfer into Georgia has made a huge difference. He was pretty much a career returner before he arrived. Now he's a real difference maker. Of course, other transfer receivers have boosted that receiver room a ton. Being the leading drop in the entire league last year, which is really poor, and that's probably part of why Beck struggled there. They've been able to address that issue with the portal. Now on the other side, Chris Brazzell being the lead guy for Tennessee, already having a great start to the year. Braylon Staley behind him also having a pretty good start. And also Killsman returns at tight end, can be a difference maker there. Would be remiss to not mention that Georgia's tight end room is disgusting. They always have just a rotation, tons of tight ends that come in and out of there can be difference makers. You look at the two defenses. This is two of the top defenses. One of them based on just the pure talent that they have. The other based on the scheme that they're able to run with the guys that they have. So I expect that this one will be really close. Going to be an probably offensive and defensive battle, and we'll see which offense can prevail against the other strong defense. Going up to make a pick in this one, taking place in Neyland Stadium. Dalton, I'll let the hype build a little bit. Looking at these analytics, of course, very, very close, but you've got the Tennessee Volunteers as the favorite. And then you go down and you look at the spread, where it's closed from 6.5 to 3.5. So people around the college football world are talking and saying, "Hey, man, these Volunteers, they've got a real chance in this one against a really strong Georgia team, especially because Kirby's probably the best coach in college football. He's going to be able to go into these environments and coach really well. And I do think that the Georgia Bulldogs go on the road and get the win here. Dalton, I'm sorry. I do think that Tennessee is actually really good this year, though. I do think that Tennessee has the chance to beat someone down the road that you may be happier that I pick you for. But at this point in time, I'm just going to take Georgia. It's strictly because of Kirby Smart and the way he wins games that he shouldn't win sometimes. Not necessarily they less talented, but going into Tennessee is arguably one of the top, I'd say it's top three in the SEC, if not number one. So I do think Death Valley is definitely up there with competition for it. And of course, Bryant Denny is extremely difficult to go into and play. It's a really good team. I think that Tennessee gives them a really good game, but I'm just a little bit more confident in what Georgia gives me because they always are at the top of the country. And I just think they'll get this one done. Dalton, go ahead.
Yes, you know where I'm going to go with this one. I think the Volunteers all the way. I've we have so many athletes, and Neyland is the hardest place to play in college football, in my opinion. You're going to disagree with me there. It's the loudest place in college football. That's been confirmed, and it's just like the fact of I think that this Georgia team is not a normal Georgia team. This is not the early 2020s Georgia teams. This is not them, and I think that we definitely have a very good shot at this game. It'll be very close. I can see this game coming down to a couple years ago. It was Josh Dobbs to Jawan Jennings, and now it's going to be Joey Aguilar to Chris Brazzell. So I mean, it's just uh, I think it'll be a very close ball game. I'm very excited. I'm hoping to go down and see College Game Day. I can't afford tickets this game. Wait, $1,000 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They just keep going. I thought they were going to get cheaper as it got on.
Yeah.
They're getting more expensive. So looks like I'm not going.
Cheapest seat right now, 368. Listed
Yeah,
on Vivid, which you can get a little bit cheaper on TickPick. But I think, like I said, towards the end of the week, you might be able to sneak one in there. But I don't think it's
yeah. I'm not sitting in the nosebleeds
not
for
worth it. Yeah, I mean,
no.
two, $300 to the top of the stadium is not worth it. So
I might try to sneak in or something. I don't know.
sneak in.
I'll sit on the field if they let me.
See if you let you just walk in with the team. But yeah, I agree with a lot what you said there. I don't think that this is a dominant Georgia team. I don't think they are like they were when they were, the national champion favorite. But like I said before, I just think that they're the more experienced team, and that would give them the edge. But I do think you're right. It's going to be a really good game, come down to the wire, and we'll see which one can get it done for a big SEC victory early on. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Obviously, had a great time making those picks. 10 games, got some really big ones in there. Of course, biggest one being that Georgia-Tennessee game. Going to be a deciding factor in who could be at the top of the conference and potentially a game that could decide which one makes the SEC championship at the end of the year if both of these teams continue looking as good as they have early in the season. Obviously, Dalton, I know you're super excited for it, so I'll let you
Yeah,
give one last little recap here, one last little rundown for the Vols.
yeah. It's a huge week. This is huge week. If you win this game, you could be in the lead. You're going to be in the lead for the SEC right now because that Georgia team's always there, and you've got three huge games coming up soon, and this is one of them. And you win this one, you can win. You can lose another. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's very important.
Leaves you some more availability to drop a game later in the year
Yeah,
that, you got to, we talked about the three games you had to win, how to get two out of three. So it
yeah,
would leave you more availability to drop one of those later in the year, especially one on the road somewhere, which obviously
yeah.
gets more difficult. And again, I expect this will be a really good game. I expect a lot of these games on this slate will be really fun. I think the first one we talked about can be really fun. Georgia Tech, Clemson with a healthy Haynes King. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Keep following along. We'll release an analysis of these games on Monday or Tuesday of next week and get some good talks in about those. I may also be looking at making an NFL podcast. Maybe have one of my other buddies on here said he wanted to do a little NFL. Dalton is not an NFL guy, so
No,
see if he wants to do that a little bit. Might talk NFL, and obviously my mostly Hokies podcast I've been doing talking about tech. Hey, it ain't too much to talk about lately, so we might not be releasing one right before the Vanderbilt or the ODU game because of course how Vanderbilt went. But that one is also running. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Had a lot of fun. Peace.
peace.